Hi everyone, welcome. I've been absent for a little bit, been busy, but we're back and I can't wait to share this with you. Very important topic. I think a lot of people are always worried about the time that they have, and I think it's a lot of it happens. We are bombarded with a lot of activities, with a lot of things, a lot of information, and it can feel overwhelming. And we can even say to ourselves, "Man, I just don't have the time. If I just had more time." Right? Not too long ago, I met a girl that said, time is always against me. It was always that paradigm that we have in our head that if we just had more time, we could get things done. So this is a topic that I think a lot of people think about. How can I get more stuff done, or how can I make better use of my time? Now, we're going to change that a little bit, as you can probably guess by the way that I talk about things, that many times is the way we think about things that is really what's stopping us, and not necessarily if that's an actual reality. If we had 30 hours in a day or 50 hours in a day, could we really get things done? So we're going to talk about the quadrant of effectiveness real quick. Sorry, I was giving another talk in a private group here. Let me erase this. So before we talk about this, we can't really talk about that until we touch on a couple of things. And we're going to touch on principles and values, because true time management, true effectiveness, and efficiency with time use has to do with the things that you're doing, not doing more. In other words, you may experience an incremental improvement by scheduling things out and maybe being more organized. Those things that maybe you were always taught that you had to do, like a to-do list and all that is good. That will give you an incremental increase. I don't know, 10%, 20%, 30%. But really, how much better can you really use 24 hours? Really less than that, because we sleep for 8 hours on average. So now we have 16. So it's an incremental improvement. But when you it's like Peter Drucker says. He says that management is doing things right, but leadership is doing the right things. So management is important. Managing our time is important, but first we have to lead. We have to decide what is it that we're going to do. So we have to decide the right things to do, not the wrong things to do. Okay, so we're going to talk on two things here real quick. The difference between principles and values, okay? Because this is what we're going to decide. This is what we're going to prioritize, okay? And I'll show you guys the effectiveness quadrant here in a little bit. So what are principles, okay? Principles are external, okay? They're everlasting. They're, sometimes I call them first principles. So the way that I think about principles, they're like laws, okay? And we're all familiar with laws in our physical universe, right? For example, the law of gravity. The law of gravity is in action whether I want it or not. It's always happening. And so those are things that are sort of like overcompassing the universe, our lives. But besides physical laws, we also have, I think we have moral laws. And again, I could be wrong, but just put it to the test and you'll see what I'm talking about. Moral laws, right? We also have, and those moral laws and those sort of principles also have consequences, just as direct. So these things don't change. So for me, these are the things that we need to learn. What are the principles? Right, and we've talked about that, and I'm sort of a fanatic, really, of talking about these things like trust, things like loyalty, things like integrity, things, like character, building of character. And we're going to talk about how in the effectiveness quadrant this is so important, because these are the things, they say, well, how can I seem more trustworthy? Well, be trustworthy. That's how. And so when you work on these principles, right? Now, values are different, and they can overlap. Right? But they don't need to. For example, criminal organizations can have values. Corrupt organizations can have values of things that they want to achieve. But these values will always be compared and always be tied to the principles. And if these values conflict with the principles, well, there's going to be bad consequences. And if they go along with the principles, there will be consequences, but there will be good consequences. For example, just to give you an example about physical principles, if one of my values is to jump from a 20-story building, because that's just one of my values and that's just something I want to do, there's going to be consequences. I'm going to fall from a 20-story building. I'm probably going to die. Okay, so those are the consequences. The same is true when we think about our moral principles, our social principles, our interpersonal character principles. These things do not change, and those are the things that we need to focus on. Okay, so definitely we need to learn these. Now from that we start coming across some ideas that are important to us. I'll give you an example of what's important to me. Freedom is important to me. Growth is important to me. Learning is important to me. Family and close friends are important to me. Trust is important to me. Loyalty is important to me. So those are the kinds of things that are my values. Now, some of those do overlap with principles. Others are a little, more of my own making. So, but I have to be aware that if they contradict with the principles, right? Like for example, if one of my values is making money, and it is, because I'm in a business and I'm a business person. So it is true, but that is not sort of the main. That is only a means. So that's sort of maybe another layer deep here. This is more important. But if a criminal organization might be, we're going to con people out of money, right? Well, they're violating the loyalty trust principle, and that will have consequences down the line. Okay, so once we decide what our values are, all right, once we decide what is really important, okay, then we going to schedule that. So first, you have to realize, what is it that you're really good at? What is it that will really create impact in your business, in your relationships, in your, maybe you're part of a team sport, what position you play best. What are the things that are high leverage activities to you? Not because you're stuck in a job or stuck in a situation, then all of a sudden then you can't escape from it. You really have to realize that you are not, in the previous video that I said about opportunity cost. Watch that if you haven't watched this. Very important for you to. But once we realize what we're really good at, once we realize these are the high leverage activities, and these are the things that are important to me, okay? Then we can come up with a little what I call the effectiveness quadrant here, okay? Now, we're going to rate things between being them urgent, which is not the same as them being important, okay? Those two things are different. So in this first quadrant, things are urgent and important. Okay, and we're going to call that quadrant 1. And then here, these things are not urgent. I'm going to change markers here because this one's dying. Oh, let me grab a new one. If this one doesn't work. Not urgent. Urgent, but important. Here is not important, but urgent. And then here is neither not important and not urgent. Okay? So quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and 4. Okay? So this is the effectiveness quadrant. Now, it's like Goethe says, John, what's his name? I think it's Johann von Goethe. He's a German writer. Yes, a German writer. And he says, very simple phrase, things that matter most should never be at the mercy of things that matter least. Which is like, duh, well, really? Did it really take a genius like Goethe to write that? Well, yes. because a lot of times we do that and we might not even realize it, okay? Now, I'll give you an example. A lot of my clients, a lot of my prospects, a lot of the people that I talk to, even my friends, they live in a particular place in this quadrant, okay? They usually live in quadrant 1 and sometimes 3, and then when they can't handle the stress, they fly to quadrant 4, okay? So what is something that is urgent and important? Well, stuff that is pressing on your mind, right? Like putting out a fire in your business, putting out a fire in your relationships, right? You messed up and now you gotta fix things, okay? And so a lot of people live for this quadrant. Why would anybody be in quadrant 3 if it's not important but urgent? I'll give you an example. Text messages, it's terrible. Or emails or phone calls. You might have a live person right in front of you and you're having a conversation and your phone rings and you take complete attention away from them and you pick up the phone because it's urgent. Of course, sometimes the phone call might be urgent, but a lot of times it's just because it happened in the moment, because you realize, well, okay, the phone is ringing and if I don't pick it up, it's gonna stop ringing. And so this is something that's completely urgent but not important, okay? So what are the ramifications of this? Well, the ramifications of this is here you're always putting out fires, you're always stressed, you're always on edge, you're always, and this is the quadrant where people say, I don't have enough time. I can't schedule everything, okay? And so the idea here, I mean, this is so important, guys, and I'm gonna read it off of here because this is so key, and I thought, man, this is so key. And so the key is not to prioritize what is on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. I'll say it again. It's not, you can't prioritize what's on your schedule. You're going to schedule your priorities, which is a complete shift. That's why we started talking about principles and values. Those are your priorities. The other stuff, you need to outsource it, somebody else can take care of it, or it's just gonna have to fall by the wayside, and there's nothing wrong. There will be a little chaos in progress. That's okay, okay? So, very important, a lot of stress, a lot of stuff. Now, in here, in not important but urgent, here is where the person is irresponsible, where the person is all over the place, not organized, has no idea. People that check their email all the time. You know what happens? You know why people check their email all the time? That's their mind telling us, I don't know what we're doing, let's check our email. Okay? So this is not effective. And of course, quadrant 4, not important and not urgent. Why would anybody be here? Well, because you're stressed. These are distractions. These are, addictions. These are, I'm just gonna, have to go outside and, smoke a cigarette. This is, I need to go have a drink. This is, I need to go out with my friends and forget everything. I need to go out, all these things are here because of the stress and everything over here. Now, you notice there's one quadrant that I haven't talked about, and it's quadrant number 2, because this is where the secret lies, guys. This is it. This is the key right here. Not urgent, but important. And so, a lot of things that are the most important thing in our life are not urgent. It's not urgent, perhaps, that we take care of ourselves or our body, physically, working out, eating well. Perhaps it's not. Later, it will become urgent and important. It'll become a source of stress. But if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 20s, in your 40s, a lot of that time, a lot of people tend to be relatively healthy, even in their 50s and even 60s. And so, but this is going to catch up to you if you don't focus on this. And so, in this quadrant lies self-improvement in the areas of physical health, spiritual health, emotional health, psychological health. All these things are so important. This is where the magic happens, guys. This is where your values, where your principles are. So we need to spend the majority of our time in this quadrant. Now, you might be saying, well, Gabe, I can't do that. There's so many fires. And this is most of my clients and most of my prospects, they're here and they're putting out fires and they're stressed as can be because they're so in it. They can't see the forest because of the trees, right? They're just stuck in there. And so what they need to realize is they need to stop, right? Not to go to quadrant 4 and hang out. No, they need to stop pull themselves out, completely out, and then realize, okay, what is really important? What is it that the things that are that matter the least, or that matter the most, have been at the mercy of things that matter the least? And then when you start making a list of these things, right, of this self-improvement or improvement in your business, in your systems, and whatever it is that's really going to give you leverage, or things that are like really close to you. For example, one of the things that are important to me are these videos. Very important to me, because I have so much input and so many experiences, and I realized that I need to circulate those. I need to circulate those with people. I need to circulate those and sharing them with others. So this is a very high leverage activity. I'm not making any money off of doing these videos. So it's not urgent that I make these videos. It's not urgent for me to read. It's not urgent for me to go to a conference. It's not urgent for me to work out every day. It's not urgent for me to eat healthy and take care of my body. It's not urgent, but it's important. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this, really, and if you've been following me for a little bit, you know that I'm working on all these things as hard as anybody else, and I mess up, and sometimes I go to Quadrant 4 because I'm stressed and stuff. Sometimes I have to put out fires in my business. Like right now, my website is something's going on. We switched the SSL license, and it's just formatting wise, and so like I'm putting out that fire right now, but I realize, okay, this is the time in my day that's going to make everything else easier. So it's not about scheduling everything out. It's not like, first you have to realize, well, what is it that you're scheduling? Is that something even that you should schedule? Is that something that is even important at all? First, is it something that you should be doing? Or is it something that you can outsource? You can give to one of your employees, or to somebody else that helps you out. And so this is very important. So effectiveness. Let's focus on what is not urgent but important in our lives. Tell you what, relationships. Ain't that a big one? Your family. Maybe it's not urgent. Maybe nobody's dying. Maybe nobody's sick. Maybe your son, your daughter does not have a soccer game during that weekend. But it is so important that you start making that daily investment in those relationships, because those things go down, and then eventually they realize, okay, well, this is now urgent and important, but now those relationships are gone, and if you didn't make that investment, then there's nothing you can do about that. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. True time management has to do with not doing things right, but rather doing the right things. We'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.